And welcome back to the Interfaith Roundtable. I'm Cantor Mark Perman. And since this will be my last program, at least for a while, as I'm moving to Houston, and once the show airs, I will have moved to Houston in a few weeks to take a position at a large congregation, I was thinking about how to make my last program be a synthesis of a number of different things, different values that encompass what the show has been about from the beginning. It's been a joy to do the program and to meet a wide variety of people from a cross-section of backgrounds and experiences. For me, it's been a joy to combine my love of broadcasting with my experience in the realm of spirituality and religion. Reflecting on it, I decided that my last show as an animal lover should be about animals, of all things. I would devote my last program to a subject that is near and dear to my heart, the preservation and the care of animals. Though there are many problems in the world centered around human beings, it seems that if we become a society that truly takes care of its most vulnerable, and if we become a world that no longer creates hardships and suffering for animals, then perhaps we will become a society that has greater respect and reverence for human life as well. Joining me now to discuss a wonderful organization that I actually have a kitty from and am fostering a kitty from, Priscilla. You probably know about that.
Absolutely.
Called Kitty Angels, one of the foremost no-kill shelters in Connecticut. Is it called a shelter or a...
It's a shelter, yes.
Or a refuge. It's a shelter.
Well,
okay.
It's a shelter and I guess sort of a refuge. Some cats permanently live there.
Well, let me formally introduce Sandi Larson, who is the director and founder, and as the other Sandi said, the CEO of the organization. So what inspired you to care specifically for cats, and how do you see that as a spiritual value?
Well, I was drawn to cats since I was very little, and I had a lot of medical problems when I was growing up, and when I was 4 years old, I was home in bed, and my mom said, "I'll get you anything you want." How do you like that? In the world. And she said, "What do you want?" I said, "A cat." Aww. So she went down the street to a spinster and grabbed her cat and brought her home. And so I've been drawn to cats since the beginning. And
they're spiritual beings.
They are, very much so.
There's something mystical about the way they look at you.
Absolutely,
like,
very much so.
You think you're in charge, but they're in charge.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very much different than dogs, although I have dogs too.
Right.
Yeah, you know when they come to you that they want to be there, not because you ask them to be there.
Right. It's a choice. Right. So you've been involved in animal work for many, many years. And,
yes, I have.
Tell everybody a little bit about anti-vivisection and what that is and why that's important.
I worked in Harvard in research for 5.5 years, and was at the Joslin Diabetes Foundation, which is a Harvard affiliate, and we did animal research there. I was in charge of mostly tissue culture and cell biology, but our group used animals, dogs and rabbits and rats, and that's how I got into the whole anti-vivisection issue, because I saw what went on there, and was very troubled by what I saw.
Even though the argument is made that we have to fight human diseases, we have to do that kind of thing, you would argue that it's okay, but it's not being done right? Or
well, no, it's not okay because it's not good science. I mean, we could probably do 3 programs on that, but it's not good science. You know, we are not rats, we're not rabbits. We are mammals, we're all mammals, but there's some huge differences between us and cats and dogs and the way we react to drugs. You see all the time watching TV that there'll be a commercial about a drug that has been out on the market, is being recalled because it has harmed people. And when you're only doing animal research, it may work great in the rat, but again, we're not rats. We have different reactions to chemicals. There's a test called the LD50. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's actually been used in poison control for a long time, and it's the lethal dose 50, the dose of a drug that kills 50% of the population. And it's a very archaic system. We still use it, but it doesn't tell us what will happen in the human being. So it's the way, for example, the Human Genome Project, that was a great thing. That told us about us. And that's what we need to know about, is about humans and what's happening and why we're getting sick and how drugs can help us or not help us. And that was a great study, and it was worth every cent.
So to back up, you would say that most, if not all, animal testing that, say, researches on for cancer or AIDS or other diseases can be done in other ways?
Yes.
And
absolutely.
The benefits of the research do not outweigh the harm it does to animals and the ethical violation of utilizing them in that way?
Well, if you have a balance, and with research you're trying to create less harm, you're trying to make it so that people aren't suffering.
Cost benefit.
Yes.
Right.
So if you're, at the same time, if you're causing harm to animals, the scale doesn't change. You're not creating more good, you're creating more suffering.
So do you believe in that term? When I was studying ethics at NYU, there was a term called speciesist.
Yes.
Sort of like racist, where you say,
That's
my
correct.
species comes first, and I don't care about your species because I'm stronger than you are.
Absolutely.
So you would buy into that
Yes.
philosophy?
Absolutely.
Now, some would say that's radical. That we, but that's their perspective, right?
Well, it's just quickly. I've done a lot of presentations on this issue, animal rights in particular, and the way I look at it briefly is there is a spectrum. Is belief about animals, and at the far right of the spectrum you've got utilitarianism, where animals are here for us to use, period.
Right.
A lot of farmers are in that, not all of them,
farming.
okay. You get into the middle is what I call kitty and doggy people. That's no cut meant, but people that care about dogs and cats, that's it. They want everything for their dogs and cats, and that's great, and that's a good thing. You get over to the far left and you have the Animal Liberation Front, where they break into labs and so on. So, and you've got everybody in between. People that call themselves animal rightists are, they're people that don't wear, leather. They don't eat animals. They don't want them hunted. That's at the far left end. So I'm over there somewhere.
Right.
I'm not at the end, but I'm over there.
Right. So tell us about the evolution from that kind of work, and I'm sure that's still a priority, and many of us are actively opposed to factory farming and the use of VO calves and the use of gestation crates for pigs and battery cages for chickens and so forth. So what brought you from that point to basically founding or discovering the need for something like Kitty Angels?
When I moved to the Boston area, I lived in a small town, and I got a flyer in the mail one day that said that the local shelter was, actually it's a local volunteer organization, was trying to build a shelter, and they needed people to come to the town meeting that night to speak for that. So I got involved in that, and then I started learning about how many animals were killed every year. By the way, I don't call killing euthanasia. Killing is killing. Euthanasia is ending suffering.
Yes.
And how many
putting
animals?
To sleep.
Put to sleep. The euphemism, putting to sleep, which we like to say because it makes us feel better, but it's killing. And I found out more and more about the facts, and especially cats, how many cats are killed every year. The problem is that cats don't have the same rights as dogs do because we don't license them, and we don't have animal control agencies in the state, hardly any of them that work with cats. Our town doesn't even work with dogs. We have nothing.
What town is that?
Coventry.
Oh.
In fact, the animal control officer calls me when there's a problem. And Kitty Angels does not get compensated for anything that we do.
No reimbursement from the state or this,
No, nothing. So I found out more facts about this, found out that there's such a thing as kitten season, which is in June, and the population explodes and there's no place for these animals to go. And so I got very involved in this group, which was the Harvard Volunteer Humane Society at that point. Now it's changed its name. And at one point, they voted to start euthanasia of animals that came in that would cost a lot of money to treat. I don't believe in that. And so that's when I broke off and started Kitty Angels.
But, you know, sometimes on Facebook you get these people very critical of the shelters and sort of putting the moral blame on them. And sometimes I follow up on some of these claims, and I hear the efforts that a lot of these kill shelters make to find people to adopt.
Absolutely.
And they get overrun, and an animal only has 30 days, more come in.
That's right.
They know which are adoptable, which aren't. So they're playing God in a sense, but they're trying. I've never encountered one where they seem to enjoy that.
Absolutely not.
So it's sort of like shooting the messenger.
And I'm not trying to put them down either. We need them.
Right.
And they're not the problem.
Right.
The problem is that people are irresponsible. Yeah. They don't spay and neuter. I don't need to tell you that. But that is the crux of the matter. We need to spay and neuter everybody.
Everybody. Human beings.
Well, we can get into that too. But
you know, we create this situation, don't we? And historically, we bring animals with us that are not indigenous to this population, and there's no natural predators. There's it throws off the whole balance. I mean, like if you go to Israel, I never realized till I lived in Jerusalem, regardless of what's going on now with human conflict, but the state of the cat situation in Jerusalem. I mean, cats will jump out of garbage cans. They're all over the place. Yeah. You know, they were not indigenous, I don't think, to that specific area.
Right.
So spaying and neutering is the answer, or what are some of the solutions?
Well, in the last probably more than 10 years, a lot of the big shelters have, like Best Friends in Utah, have started, this no-kill nation. Is what it's called. And, many people buy into that. I do. I would like to see a no-kill nation. And there's cities such as Las Vegas, believe it or not. You wouldn't think of Las Vegas, or I wouldn't, as a city that would do this. But the city fathers and mothers decided that that's what they were working towards, that there would be no animal killed unless it was totally vicious and not going to be rehabilitated, that every single animal would be placed. And in order to do that, every single animal has to be spayed and neutered to get the population down so that everybody can be adopted. And that was a big step for them.
How's it worked?
It's worked well.
It's worked, yeah?
It's worked well.
Could it be a model for the rest of the country?
I would think so. But again, you have to have the people that are in charge make that commitment to say, yes, this is what we're going to do, we believe in this, and this is how we're going to do it. There never will be enough shelters to hold the number of animals that are out there that need help. Never.
Talk a little bit about, because this is the Interfaith Roundtable, so how the way we treat animals, in your view, and you've studied ethics, and my God, you're a Harvard person, parallels with how we treat human beings. There's a book called Eternal Treblinka, which talks about factory farming and how that it replicates a Holocaust situation for animals ongoing. And of course, a lot of understandable people, my people and others whose relatives and ancestors were victimized by genocide, find that an offensive parallel.
I understand.
But there are parallels.
There's
parallels. No question.
There absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, some of the pictures that, if you look into this issue, that you see are for slavery. I'll get to the other issue in a second. For slavery, you will see a muzzle on a human being. You'll see the same muzzle on a dog. You'll see the tattoos on the animals, the tattoos on the people. Yeah. I understand how that would offend people. I totally understand that. It's hard to open the door to look at that in a different way. Right. Come out of the box, which is an old expression, but that's what it is. Yeah. It's opening that door, looking in. Oh, I don't know if I want to go there. That's pretty scary. Yeah. But the more you look into this, like Henry Beston, have you read any of his writings? He wrote The Outermost House. And one of the quotes that I've always found very useful, he said, the question is not, can they speak or can they reason, but can they suffer? Yeah. Well, sentient beings. Yeah, the sentient beings. We all suffer the same. Yeah. So do we have a right to cause suffering to another being? We're supposed to be the most intelligent animals on the planet. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but And so how can we do that?
Are you a vegetarian or a vegan?
I am.
Yeah. I mean, there is an argument that when Native Americans or other people hunted, at least they used what they hunted for food.
Exactly.
They didn't put them in warehouses. They didn't raise them just specifically. They were wild, and then they were used for food. So there's something normal in the. But back to Kitty Angels. So tell us more about how many kitties there, and how many are looking to be adopted, and if people would like to adopt or foster or even come visit, how can they become connected with Kitty Angels?
Let me just say one thing about Kitty Angels and how it was founded, and this is really a sort of a corny story, but when I lived up in northern Massachusetts, just before I started Kitty Angels, I went into a movie theater that night. It was snowing, and came out, and this was right on Route 3, which is a very busy highway, and there was a little kitten in the reeds over near the highway, and I. My husband and I at the time tried so hard to catch that little kitten, and we could not. And I knew it died. I'm sure it did. But, I thought, so here's what needs to happen is, the kitty angel needs to come down and, scoop this kitten up and rescue it. That was my thinking that night, and that's how I started that. Because I can't do anything, so there has to be someone else that can help this kitten.
So you became the Kitty Angel. And why cats and not dogs?
Well, like I said, first of all, at the beginning, I've always been very drawn to cats for some reason. But the other reason is that dogs, when you rescue dogs, you have to have special permits. You have the barking issue. You have the sanitation issue, which is much different than in cats. And I don't live really near to many people, but still, the barking, I don't want to disturb my neighbors. So rescuing dogs is a whole different issue. And so cats are quiet.
Some, not mine.
Well,
okay.
You're right. Some of them are. Yes, I have one in heat on the porch right now, and she hasn't gotten to her spay-neuter date yet. But anyway.
How many cats are there at Kitty Angels? And can people come and visit, and kids can play with them?
Absolutely.
And so forth?
Yes,
There's some shelters where we do at the synagogue mitzvah projects for the kids to get involved and help animals as a Jewish value.
Nice.
Some of the places don't allow kids. I mean, even with adults, they don't want anybody under 16.
Oh, absolutely not.
So I don't know why that is. It doesn't make sense.
Well, you're fostering, responsibility and kindness.
Yeah.
2 summers ago, we have a large, really nice post and beam barn. And we had so many kittens that I said, okay, let's put them up in the loft, which is a huge, huge area in this barn. And so on Saturdays, the kids would come, and this was like a whole runway. There was no hay in the barn. The kids would come up there. They would sit in a big circle, and they would pass the kittens back and forth and play with them. And they learned about spay and neuter. They learned what it takes to be a responsible, human guardian.
When you see these cases where young people, kids, when they become adults, are abusive to animals or like to torture them and so forth, is that, in your experience, psychological aberration? Is that children who themselves have been abused and they're modeling that behavior?
Absolutely.
And does that animal behavior then extend sometimes to human abuse? What can be done?
Well, back in the, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, there was some research done at Yale by a man named Stephen Kellert. He did the original research on that link between animal abuse and human abuse. And he did it in prisons, and he looked at violent criminals versus white-collar criminals versus the, control group who hadn't been in prison. And he found in every single case, that violent criminals had started out by abusing animals, hadn't gotten the help they needed at that point, went on to abuse people, and it's right there. If you can abuse an animal, a non-human, you can abuse a human.
Then there's treatment for that, and there's whatever psychology.
There is, and
so,
San Francisco, their animal control and their Department of Youth Services, when there's a call about an abuse, they go together. Because if one thing's happening, the other thing is happening. So I think that's a really good program that they have there.
For people who'd like to get involved in Kitty Angels, just tell folks information, number of contact, where you are, and how many cats you have, and why they should be. Now, you also foster. A lot of places don't allow fostering.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
You're not worried about cats being handed back and taken here and taken there. Well, sometimes it's nice. It's like kitty hotels.
Oh, fostering.
Yeah.
We have our foster parents sign a foster agreement.
Yep, as I did. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, right, exactly. And basically what we're looking for is a responsible person or family to take on usually kittens, sometimes a mother and kittens, make sure that they're safe, they don't go out, they're fed properly, they need to be very aware of the actions and of the animals so that if they become sick, they let us know right away. But we can take in many more animals and save them if we have foster people. I do not put kittens ever in the shelter because sometimes adults harbor viruses that, they don't get sick, but kittens that come in would. So there's no kittens in the shelter.
How many kitties are there? Do they all get along? I mean, are they peaceful?
Actually, we don't use cages in our shelter. Everybody runs around together. It's very nice. It's all tiled, and they have their little beds and cat trees. People come in the shelter and they say, does everybody get along? I don't see fighting. And the shelter is actually like a group home. Everybody comes in. They all live there. There's no house or individual human that they have to compete for. So everybody, believe it or not, gets along. And there's little cliques, where these guys hang out together. And it's very nice because it is quite a friendly place for cats.
All right, Sandi, Larson. So tell everybody email and so forth, and location and phone number and all of that.
We are in Coventry, Connecticut. The phone number is 860-742-8250. We have a P.O. box, which is Kitty Angels of CT, P.O. Box 508 in Coventry, 06238. If you send a donation or you go online, you want to look for Kitty Angels of CT because I have another shelter in Massachusetts, which is Kitty Angels. So I came down here in 1988 to start a second shelter.
Wonderful. I'm just going to do a little wrap up and thank
Sure.
you so much for being here. And I want to thank my audience. It has been my pleasure to have hosted this program, and you are at the moment the last guest until
Okay.
unless I decide to resume it in Houston. You never know. And then I'll call you to come on the first show in Houston. Okay. But it's been my pleasure to host this program for a year and a half on SCTV. It began as a promo program for the Interfaith Thanksgiving service, which we did in Simsbury, and it blossomed into something more over time. It has been a great joy for me to have interviewed so many wonderful people and to have had a chance to bring the message of interfaith cooperation and dialogue to the folks here in Simsbury. I mean, it's something that is so needed, and I think you mentioned that you have what's your background, is Presbyterian, and you work with all different faiths, and would you say that animal protection is a traditional spiritual value across denominational lines?
I think so, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I want to thank Karen Hanville. I've got all the names there. Phyllis Fishberg, Jason Staples, who's no longer with the organization but helped me so much, Althea Graney, Phil. How do I say your name properly, Phil? Thank you. And Max Horton. And this wonderful thing called SCTV. And if you can donate and contribute and be a part of this wonderful community of cooperation across denominational lines and the community work that this organization does. These are difficult times globally, and it seems to me there is no time like the present to bring a message of cooperation, hope, and understanding to all those who need it in the world. Thank you so much for watching. Keep tuned to SCTV. Hopefully our show will be back in a different form. And thank you for watching.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.